Writing for human rights issues and reporting human rights violations are tasks that impose massive responsibilities on the active journalist to serve, support, and sustain values of humanity and social welfare. Reporting human rights issues involves identifying the issue, researching and analyzing the issue from different perspectives and in different contexts, understanding the legality of the issue, and collecting evidences to support the written arguments in the story article. Journalists writing on human rights need to be aware, sensitized, and objective in reporting those issues. This module presents a discourse on writing to protect and sustain the basic human rights of citizens and learning how to report and write about these issues in the most ethical, objective, fair, truthful, and justified ways. Students will learn about the various factors that amount to human rights violation by delving into certain case studies rooted in India and different parts of the world. As active journalists, it is very essential to know, understand, and interpret how to report and write about human rights issues like child sexual abuse, mutilation, mob lynching, etc. Therefore, this module will also enable the students to learn the guidelines for reporting and writing about human rights issues and violations. Before we begin to understand reporting and writing for human rights of the people in India and the world, let us gain a basic knowledge about what human rights actually are. The subject expert for today is Professor F.B. Khan. He is a renowned photographer and media expert currently teaching at AJK MCRC Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. What are human rights? Human rights are the basic rights and liberties possessed by every individual in the world, irrespective of color, caste, creed, gender, religion, complexion, nationality, or ethnicity. These rights remain with an individual from birth to death. Human rights are based on the same shared values of the people like equality, respect, and liberty. Human rights are universal. That is, every human being has an entitlement to enjoy these rights without any kind of discrimination. During the Second World War, there were many atrocities committed on human life. Therefore, the protection of human rights became an international priority. The United Nations, founded in 1945, allowed several countries to adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was a global attempt to protect the basic rights of all the human beings in the world. The international human rights law has laid the major guideline for all the country governments to protect the human rights of their citizens, irrespective of the nature of governance. However, human rights can be taken away in specific situations, like if a person breaks the law or there is a threat to national security. For example, a person has committed crime, so his liberty will be taken away by the country law as punishment. In India, human rights issues are complex and dynamic, given to the large and culturally diverse population and lack of education and awareness about these rights. Basic human rights given to citizens of India are listed as below. First, right to life, family, and private. Second, right to equality before law. Third, right to practice any religion. Fourth, freedom of expression. Fifth, freedom of movement. Sixth, right to work, social security, and education. Seventh, economic, social, and cultural collective rights. National Human Rights Commission is an autonomous body in India formed in 1993 for protection and promotion of human rights of Indian citizens. Violation of some of the basic human rights includes the following. First, forcing people to leave their home is violation of their right to inhabit a place or housing of their choice. Second, depriving people of state-owned health facilities or denying them the access to services for sexual and reproductive health is a violation of their right to enjoy good health. Third, depriving the workers of their minimum wages and do not allowing them to have a decent living is the violation of their rights to work. Likewise, discrimination of workers on the basis of gender, disability or race is also a violation of their right to work. Fourth, if the government fails to eradicate starvation in the communities of the state, it is violation of people's right to attain freedom from hunger. Fifth, discriminating children on the basis of their disabilities and not giving disabled children admission in schools is a violation of their right to education. Sixth, a failure to acknowledge the need for maternity leave for working women who are lactating mothers or denying assistance to people because of their social status is a violation of their social security rights. Human rights violation in India. Case studies. Below is the recommended list of case studies about human rights violations. People refer to these cases to enhance your understanding about the human rights violation and human rights abuses of several kinds. First, Partition of India, 1947. During the Partition of India and Pakistan, large-scale riots took place between the Hindus and the Muslim communities. A large number of men were killed, women and children were mutilated. It has been the biggest example of human rights atrocities in the country. Second, ethnic cleansing of the Pandit Community, 1989, and the Bakerwal Community, 1947 in Jammu and Kashmir. Both these events involved a very large number of men being killed and women being raped and killed. Note, Human Rights Watch has it documented in its findings that rape of a woman is used as a weapon by one community to terrorize another community or a means to seek revenge from a community. Third, emergency of 1975 to 1977. There were limitations imposed on human rights, including arresting journalists, torturing by the police and killing the suspected activists without any trials. Fourth, Gujarat Riots 2002. On demolition of Babri Masjid shook the state with massive human rights violation cases of killings, rapes, abductions and letting bodies rot and consumed by birds without proper cremation. Fifth, Kathua rape case. An 8-year-old girl named Asifa belonging to the Bakerwal community was abducted, gang raped for several days and killed in the temple. This was a heinous violation of the child's right to life and security. Note, while writing reports about children who have been the victims of sexual abuse, especially those living in the conflicted areas like Jammu and Kashmir, it is essential to describe the bigger picture. The circumstances under which such violations were committed, the ongoing trends and patterns related to the particular fields of human rights abuse, identification of the culprits and urging the government to provide justice to the victims of human rights abuse, collecting evidences to support the arguments and making effective recommendations for advocating the human rights restoration for the victims and compensation to their families. Examples of human rights violations in the world. First, Syria. Several attacks on civilians by the government-aided armed forces has resulted in major human rights violations, particularly right to life. It has increased the refugee population by manifolds. Second, Russia. Near presidential elections, there were peaceful protests going on in the country in 2017 and several protesters were arrested, thrashed and intimidated by the police for protesting. Freedom of expression has remained severely curbed in the country. Third, Israel. There have been killings of Palestinian civilians, including thousands of women and children, who protested against the oppressive military rule prevalent in Israel. Report writing the human rights issues. Reporting the human rights issues is a multi-staged process that involves understanding the core issue from different perspectives and in different contexts. Researching about the issue, its implications on different groups of people, and the legalities of the state and the international laws related to the issue is pivotal for effective report writing. There are two kinds of reports written for human rights issues. First, internal or organization reports are those which are written to communicate some information about the issue within the organization functioning for human rights issues. These can be incident reports, periodic reports, interview reports, or emergency reports. Second, external or public reports are to be used outside the ambit of human rights organizations and can be accessed by general public. These can range from investigation report to advocacy reports. Public reports are written to draw the attention of the government towards the human rights issues. Features of the ideal reports on human rights issues. First, action-oriented. Write a report on human rights issue which is action-oriented. The report has to advocate the necessary call to action from the relevant stakeholders and the government for the sake of the involved victims and potential victims. Second, confidential and consensual information. The report involving victims' personal information, experience of human rights abuse as well as quotations should be kept confidential and should be published only after the informed consent from the victims or victim or the person whose interview is documented in the report. It is a norm in the human rights organization that the identity of the victims, the name of the witnesses and the sources of information are kept confidential and are concealed most of the time. Third, clear, concise, relevant and time-bound recommendations. Journalists writing for human rights have to make certain recommendations to the government or civil society and have to make sure that those recommendations have a direct impact on stakeholders. Pre-reporting preparation for writing on human rights issues. Journalism for human rights is successfully activated through thorough research, planning, knowledge of human rights, and the grammar for writing news stories in the print, electronic, and new media. It is very important for a journalist to align the core planned objectives and priorities of the organization with the news stories. Understand who are you writing for and what are your assets and limitations. Below is a list of steps to prepare a journalist who intends to write for human rights issues. First, identifying the human rights issue. Select an issue that has impacted you in some way or the other. In this way, your writing can have the touch of advocacy towards promoting a social cause or protecting the rights of a community. Ask yourself, why is writing on this issue crucial? Second, define your purpose who varies according to the selected issue. If it is a story about human rights violation, your purpose as an active journalist is to report the violation in the most fair, objective and unbiased manner without taking sides or single perspective in view. If the story is about illiteracy of the people in context of human rights, your purpose is to reach out to the community leaders and opinion leaders with your writings to usher call for change so that you can create difference in the lives of the illiterate people. Third, decide the target audience. Who are you writing this piece for? Decide a relevant target audience you intend to address. It may be the stakeholders of a community or the government bodies or the public in general. Fourth, select a form of writing. Select a form of writing based on the target audience. Ask yourself, is it going to be an investigative report or a case study or a research article or an academic class project? Select a suitable form of writing that is best suited for your readers. Fifth, in-depth understanding of the human rights issue in different contexts. Researching about the various aspects of the selected issue is important to gather different perspectives to the story. Stories written from one-dimensional perspective lack dynamism and truth. Know the impact of the issue on the local community, state, country, and the world at large. What difference can your writing bring to the issue? Sixth, establishing a legal framework. After you have identified the underlying issue and its context, try to figure out its place in the legal framework. Research to enlist and read about the national and international laws for protection of human rights within which the issue is governed. This is done to give weight to the report. Seventh, gather supporting evidences. Journalists write about human rights issues to advocate against their violation. Gathering textual, audiovisual or documental evidences to support the arguments made in this report is very important. Supporting case studies that help in strengthening the argument of the report can be extracted from the human rights case database. Eighth, sift through the changing trends and patterns of human rights violations in the local and global contexts. In the last 1 decade, by focusing on certain variables like locations and nature of human rights violation, ethnicity and religion of the victims, etc. Knowing the changes in these variables becomes important to writing articles for successful intervention and for advocating a positive change in the present situation. After these steps, you are ready to write a report on the selected, researched and evidenced human rights issues. The steps mentioned above will ease out the process of report writing. Now let us discuss the various types of reports written for human rights issues. First, interview reports are written to document the personal interviews and experience of the human rights abuse victim or a witness or any other source of information. These reports have confidential information and therefore are shared only amongst the working staff, and any information that is purely personal is not published in the media channels without proper consent of the victim. These reports contain detailed information about the human rights abuse or violation, and the journalist has to make sure that the information is not tampered with or facts and quotes are not manipulated. These reports are written as third-person account. Second, emergency reports are written by the journalists and writers working on the field of the human rights violation. These reports are written with immediacy using present tense, active voice, and direct speech. Emergency reports are written to draw direct and immediate attention and alertness of the officials at the head office towards the ongoing violation or abuse of human rights. The essentials of emergency reports are A. Incident of violation, B. Action taken by the human rights journalist on field, C. Response of the various local authorities towards the issue, D. Planned efforts of the human rights organization to solve the issue, and E. The support required from the headquarters. Third, reporting to the headquarters. Regular internal reports are submitted to the headquarters by the sub-quarter organizations working to protect the human rights on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Fourth, reporting to United Nations bodies. All the local organizations working to protect the human rights send their reports to the United Nations Human Rights Council annually. Statistical figures are used to emphasize on certain grave issues like rape, sexual slavery, forced prostitution, forced sterilization, sexual violence of all kinds against all genders. Fifth, confidential reports to the government. Certain reports containing confidential information of the victim in the form of interviews or case studies are given to the government for necessary support from it in the form of compensation or otherwise to improve their capacity to help the victims of human rights abuse. These reports are neither published in the media nor open for public access. Sixth, reporting to the public at large. There are human rights advocacy reports available for public access on the websites of non-profit organizations working for human rights protection, government websites like National Human Rights Commission and international website United Nations Council for Human Rights Protection. Rules of grammar. Guidelines for writing about human rights issue. First, there has to be a clarity and consistency in the writing about the various aspects of the issue, which will come from clear use of simple and uncomplicated language as well as research about the legal, ethical, social and political aspects of the issue. Second, write the main argument in the beginning of the first paragraph with clarity, firmness and conviction. Third, write the subject close to the main verb in the sentence. Fourth, always use active voice and present tense in writing rather than passive voice and past or future tense. Writing in active voice and present tense conveys the prominence of the issue in the present day and time as if the issue needs to be solved immediately. Fifth, write short sentences in concise paragraphs. Do not overstretch the argument in long paragraphs that are lengthy to read and comprehend. Also avoid using legal jargons. Replace the technical words with simpler words if you are writing a public report on human rights issues. Sixth, reread the written report to eliminate repetition of the same statements. Make the report very newsy, crisp and adhere to the pre-decided or given word limit strictly. Seventh, avoid using main adjectives and adverbs in front of a person's name to retain the objectivity expected of an active journalist. Eighth, avoid abbreviations and use full forms instead of short forms. Use of slang language is strictly not permitted while writing formal reports on human rights issues. Ninth, the language used for writing report on human rights should indicate gender sensitivity. 10th, direct speech involving quotes of the people should be inserted in the report as supportive text to strengthen the argument. Avoid writing in indirect speech. 11th, summary of the report has to include the purpose and objectives, the methods used for gathering evidences, the various issues surrounding the violation, the key findings of the report, as well as the recommendations of advocacy needs by the journalist. Writing case study of human rights abuse. First, Contextual background of the case is prepared by understanding the root of the issue. Describe the human rights violation case to answer the following questions in context of the case. Second, forms of human rights abuse. What amounts to human rights violation in the case? Describe the series of events that have deprived people of their human rights. Which rights of the people have been taken away? Third, personal information of victims. Who are the affected victims? It involves learning about the social, cultural, ethnic, and economic background of the victims. Fourth, aftermath of human rights abuse. How has their life been affected due to the human rights violation? Are the victims aware of the human rights? What efforts have been done by the government, civil society, NGOs, and international organizations of human rights to solve the issue and restore the human rights of the victim and their families? Conclusion. The intent behind this module was to introduce students to the basics of report writing for human rights. This module facilitated learning about the meaning and components of human rights with the recommended list of readings on the several case studies of human rights violation in India. The module represented the categories of report writing on human rights issues in public and organizational spheres. Students learned about the guidelines for writing about human rights issues like child sexual abuse, child rape, and the module extends to discuss the structure to write comprehensive case studies for advocacy of human rights restoration for the victims and their families. As active journalists working for advocacy of human rights for marginalized and oppressed section of the society and world at large, basic knowledge of report writing is utmost essential. That is all that we had for you in this episode. Till the next time, it's a goodbye.